Welcome everybody. This is the next management approach. So you've already done, you should have done the classical approach and you should have done the behavioural approach. And next up we have the contingency approach. So let's just have a look at this one here. If you have a look at this little timeline down the bottom, we've got the year 2017 around about here roughly. And you can see as the tasks have changed for a business, so have the management styles. So I just want you to consider, and you probably would have heard a fair bit of this, or read a fair bit of this when you were doing the classical approach, that throughout the 1700s, a lot of the products that were being produced were quite simple, and they could produce them en mass production. And because of that, they tended to favour the classical management approach, where you just were ordered almost by your manager or by your boss what to do and when. It was very authoritarian. And then as the tasks, or as the products I suppose, started to become a little bit more customized around the 1900s, the early 1900s, okay, and the tasks required a little bit more thought and a little bit more intelligence, I suppose, in terms of producing them, then suddenly we've got the behavioural approach. And the behavioural approach favours motivating people by way of teams and having an understanding that people aren't necessarily motivated by a boss who's completely autocratic, and rather considers the opinion of others. So they're a little bit more collegial. They favour working in teams. They favour everybody's opinion. Not favour everybody's opinion, but take on board different opinions. Okay, and then they implement change that way. Up here we have the contingency approach, and the contingency approach is a bit of a combination, I suppose, of the two previous approaches. It basically states that depending upon the situation, you'll need to be adaptable with your leadership style, with your management style. So we're going to cover this one today, the contingency approach, and you can see the diagrams on the right here. Okay, we started off down the bottom. We've got the grumpy boss, quite autocratic, bit of a dictator. And then we've got this guy here who seems to be getting along with his team. Okay, he's quite a likable manager, works in teams, favours opinions, etc. This one up here, it's like a Rubik's Cube. The world is constantly changing, so let's get into it. Contingency management. While the classical and behavioural management approaches continue to provide important lessons for managers, other ideas have also emerged in the last few decades. These contemporary approaches to management represent major innovation in ways of thinking about the way in which people are managed. So we are really, in the business world especially, the business world is undergoing massive change in terms of how to manage people and how to motivate them and how to become more productive as a business. We no longer favour just yelling at people and telling them what to do and telling them how many to produce per hour, per week, per month, whatever. And we're more so now understanding that people are motivated by different factors, but the contingency approach is all about the world is changing and there are going to be changes in your business world, and you need to be flexible and adaptable and be understanding that change is inevitable. You just have to find a way of dealing with it. So you can see the lady over here, she's pretty flexible. She's obviously on a desk. Yeah, I don't know what she's doing there. Anyways, let's go to the next one. Contingency management is based on the ability of managers to be flexible and adaptive to changes in the business world. And we know that. And you can probably just have a little think to yourself right now about all the changes that have taken place in the business world just in the last year or 2 years. And then you keep brainstorming, you go, well, how many changes have occurred in the last 5 to 10 years? And you start to realise, my gosh, there have been a ton of changes by way of technology, by way of globalisation, by way of productivity, all these different areas. Things are constantly changing. Next one. Contingency theorists support new solutions for each unique situation. This is really true. You can't necessarily put every single situation at work or in a business in a particular box. You have to understand that each situation is going to be unique, and you need to call upon a variety of skills, a variety of management skills to solve that particular problem. Sometimes you might need to adopt quite a democratic approach and get people on board that way, seek their opinion. Other times you might have to adopt quite an autocratic approach and be quite bossy and be quite high expectations, I suppose. It really just depends, and that's the main thing with the contingency approach. Okay, it really just depends upon the situation and how you deal with it. So let's just take some examples here, and these are some examples that I've just found on the internet. This is earlier in the year. Childcare workers to strike on Wednesday over low pay. More than 1,000 childcare workers will walk off the job on International Women's Day on Wednesday to draw attention to the large pay gap between male and female-dominated professions. Now, imagine if you're a manager of a childcare centre at this particular point in time. You need to find a way of dealing with this problem. Now, if that's somehow tying in the behavioural management approach, then so be it. If that's somehow tying in the classical management approach, then so be it, once again. But you need to be aware that things like this happen. Not every day at work is rosy, and not every day is perfect. Things like this are going to happen. You need to find a way of dealing with it, becoming better, and moving on. Let's look at another example, because this has just happened. Good old Cyclone Debbie. Right, up in the north of Australia, North Queensland mainly. Tomato capsicum prices could rise after Cyclone Debbie. Once again, imagine if you are working in a business where you need tomatoes and capsicums. Prices are going to rise. You're going to have to find a way of dealing with it. There's no point jumping to conclusions and freaking out about the fact that you have to manage it, because the fact is you have to. There's no avoiding it. Tomato and capsicum prices are both going to rise, so you just have to call on all of your best management skills and try and deal with it in the best way. And if that's by using classical management approaches, so be it. If that's by using the behavioural management approach, once again, so be it. Call on all your skills and learn to adapt to change. Something bigger might happen though. This next guy got elected, and businesses around the world had to deal with it straight away. And this was a bit of a surprise because he wasn't expected to win. It was more so Hillary Clinton that people were expecting to win, the experts. But Trump was in, and suddenly, well, there's no avoiding it. We're just going to have to deal with it. This mainly impacts American businesses, okay? But as you know, if America sneezes, the world catches a cold. And this will have, if it hasn't already, this will have implications on Australian businesses. There is no point losing your mind about it if you're a manager. You simply need to deal with it. Next up, contingency management. Solutions to business problems must be sourced from many areas and then the best idea chosen for the business's circumstances. So you might seek the opinion of a manager who is actually above you, or you might seek the opinion of an employee who is actually below you, or a colleague who you've worked with previously. It doesn't matter. You just need to find the best solution and be flexible and be adaptable. Contingency management theorists argue that a solution to one problem may be totally unsuitable for another problem. You can't be, the word is rigid, you cannot be rigid in your thinking in today's business world. If you're rigid in your thinking, if you don't change, okay, the way that you deal with situations, you're not going to run a successful business and you're not going to be a good manager. Let's keep going. The management style used in each organisation will depend upon the requirements of the business and the task of hand. Of course, even myself as a teacher, I know that sometimes I need to put my foot down, and other times I can encourage more group work, okay, more collegiality, a more democratic approach. And then other times in class I need to get quite autocratic and I need to really put my foot down. Okay, it just depends. It just depends. You've probably noticed a shift from some of your teachers as you've moved through the grades in year 7 and 8. I'm guessing they were probably quite autocratic, but as you've grown up and as you've gotten more mature and more responsible, they've probably become more collegial. okay, and they've sought your opinion on different occasions, or they've asked for your opinion, or maybe asked for some input into an assessment task, or some feedback, or a class activity, or something like that. It just depends. Managing a business is quite similar. Contingency theorists stress that the traditional classical approach to management was not necessarily wrong, but it is no longer adequate for our needs today. And that is true. People just don't connect in general with the classical management approach anymore. If you constantly go to work and just ram your orders down your employees' throats, they're not going to like you and they're not going to connect with you. And in the business world, the most important thing for any manager is to be able to build a rapport with their employees and to relate to them. That's the best way that you're going to increase efficiency and productivity and all those buzzwords, and profitability too. Okay, because you're dealing with adults most of the time, and adults like to feel valued. In saying that, there are probably occasions, as we know from the contingency approach, there are probably occasions where particular tasks at work, they favour the classical management approach. And once again, you need to be aware of that. Okay. The organisational structure with any business may be flat, hierarchical, or decentralised, depending upon the business needs. So be adaptable. Sometimes you might have a management approach that is quite flat and collegial, and you get everybody involved. All right. Other times, no, I'm the boss, and this is how it's going to be done. It just depends. It just depends. The best managers are the ones that are able to source ideas from everywhere and really implement it successfully. To adopt this approach, managers must sample all the past and present ideas on offer. Some refer to this as the smorgasbord approach. Literally, all right, well, what type of ideas have we had in the past? What's going to suit this particular problem or issue that we have currently? What's our best possible solution? And that pretty much is the contingency management approach. So it's quite different to the classical approach and also the behavioural approach, but at the same time it combines aspects of the two also. Thank you for listening. Bye.